12 micron across the board now.
Yep.
On all of them.
Yep.
And for the 384 and 640 units, we have a new detector. Let's talk about that, because that's probably, aside from like the user interface being more simplified and better, the thermal detector being sub 20 millikelvin is quite a, when you're looking at the old versus new, like all things considered equal, like a 35 384 versus the new 35 384, like there's a big difference when you're holding them both up and you're looking. Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. In this episode of another Table Talks, we are going to be talking about our Rattler V2. And I've got with me, not really a special guest, because he's not necessarily a guest, but I've got Chase Stevens with me. He actually works for AGM. Chase, why don't you introduce yourself? Talk a little bit about your background. He has a lot more experience in the thermal industry than I do. He's been a part of it for a long time. Talk about that, and then talk about what you do for AGM, and then we'll talk about the Rattler V2.
Sure. Yeah. So just overall experience within the industry. This is about my 17th year in the industry. So 17th straight year of SHOT Show. I used to do a little bit of. I've been in sales the vast majority of that time.
Nice.
So whether that was domestic, national, I used to go to EWA, which is kind of their version of SHOT Show, every March, so was familiar with some of the international markets. So got a lot of good experience at a different company in those different areas.
But
and
thermal.
Then, all
thermal, right?
Yeah, so
thermal guru.
Yeah. So we did a ton of, thermal and night vision, I've been around for probably 12 years straight. And that's kind of moved into a specialist role within that company where I was just focused on some of the major players and influencers and thermal specialists, as we call them.
Sure.
That kind of just focus on this product category specifically. And that's what I was doing. And then I got an opportunity here with AGM. And now it's coming up on 2 years, about a year and a half, where I started. And now I'm doing, I'm the director of brand development, which is just kind of a fancy way of saying, if you drew a triangle between sales, marketing, and product development, I kind of sit right in the middle of that. So kind of as a coordinator between what the sales guys are hearing from our key dealers, what the marketing team and you guys are planning, talking about what your strategies are, and then making sure all the feedback from end users and dealers is getting to product development team to improve on products. So
that's right. That's right. Chase has been great. And he joined shortly after I joined. And part of why you're here, so that we could come out with awesome products like this.
Yeah, sure.
And we could provide the right feedback, because that was part of it. That's kind of part of your job. Like, you had a lot of input on the development of the Rattler V2, and so that's why we're here today.
Sure.
Right? So, talking about the Rattler V2. So, these are new. I'm personally pretty excited about them. There's a number of reasons I really like them. Before I worked here, my first scope was a Rattler thermal scope. It's a 384
Tell
Rattler.
Me that story today.
Yeah. So I like the Rattlers a lot, and the version 2 is quite an improvement in a lot of ways.
100%.
So I wanted to talk about that, just so maybe a little bit more in depth for everybody, and you could talk about it, I could talk about it, talk about maybe the features on the outside that kind of separate it from the V1, and we can go into some detail, and then maybe some internal features, right?
Sure.
So like for me, like just right out of the gate, like I like the form factor. I really love the improved, one thing that I love just immediately was the improved focus knob. Right.
Yep.
For me, and I go to a lot of demos, being on the marketing team, right? So I'm used to just using these things a lot. But the older models, the V1 models, right? This is just a cylinder, and the knurling's there. But the throw distance, I think it's a full 360, or it sometimes feels like more.
Sure.
When you're going from like a shallow focus to like something far, and if you're out hunting and you're trying to focus on a lot of stuff, I really love that the throw on this is like, it feels like a quarter turn or less.
Right.
It's got 3 big knobs.
Right.
And just focusing, like I can find my focus super fast.
Right.
Super easy.
Right.
What else though? What else would you say is?
Yeah. So just physically, obviously, that's one of these things where you can design things a certain way. And you can think about the basics is usually pretty easy, right? Most guys can be like, okay, it's going on a gun. It's going to be used at night. Well, then you have some more kind of advanced details, like what about when it's really cold? What about when guys are using really thick gloves? And little things like that is kind of adding these little pieces of, we call them the little shark fins here on the knurling, is just to make gripping that. A lot of guys, when they keep their eye behind the eyepiece, when they've got it down and they're tracking an animal or kind of surveying the scenery, they want to keep their eye behind the eyepiece. So the more things we can make intuitive that they can do blindly is kind of what led to that. So as you can see, we were talking about the buttons earlier being a little bit raised and easier to find. That's basically just
much
to
more
make
raised, much easier to find.
And hopefully a lot of that is when a guy's got his eye behind the eyepiece and it's cold and gloves on. Imagine that. Now that's the worst. I mean, not a super common scenario, right? Where guys sub-freezing weather and up north. There's some guys that do it regularly.
If you're a coyote hunter, you could be in the Midwest. It's cold.
You could,
so like it's a thing.
Yeah, but depending on what you're hunting and what geography, some of that can be completely different. You can hunt hogs in summer in Texas your whole life and never go out in cold weather and not notice that. But we'd kind of just like to design products physically where if you are that, or you end up making a trip up north to hunt predators and you do experience that, it's designed in a way that takes care of that, whereas nothing harms the summer hog hunter either.
Yeah, I mean, the button layout, you've got like now we have this new part of the mold is this polymer piece in between the buttons.
Right.
I mean, in my experience, just the V1s with the direction pad, or essentially, right, you got the 4 buttons in a circle. I could tell you how many times, like in the dark when I can't see, my finger was on the button I thought it was not, or whatever. Right. I was on the wrong button, and so it's definitely easier to do that. Let's talk about the battery, because that's a big change.
Huge.
And then maybe we'll talk about some internal stuff.
So obviously the sensor, which we'll get to in a second, is huge. But if you ranked it, I think most end users and most guys may even, commenting on this video would agree, battery is probably right behind image quality, the number 2 thing guys look for. And the Rattlers, as great as they were, that was to be lightweight, compact, had all the modern firmware that guys came to know and like.
2 CR123s.
But 2 CR123s. You could use it with external power if you wanted to. But
I think a lot of guys ended up, you see it on the forums, hop online, just CR123s, the battery life is just not very much. Right? I mean, usually you get like 4 hours-ish. So a lot of guys, if you wanted to be out all night, you're plugging in an external battery bank just to alleviate. CR123s are expensive, and you have to buy them a lot. And it's a pain. So like, what did we do to fix that issue?
So basically what we did is basically just getting away from the CR, because the only way you can increase power, unless you're using completely different electronics or something like that, there's a big advancement there, is the only way you increase power if you're using CR123s is just to use more CR123s. That doesn't make the problem better, it makes it a little tougher. So what we did is we went with a proprietary battery. But it's removable, rechargeable, which is big, right? You don't have to worry.
And you get 2 of them in the box.
Coming 2 in the box, and not only that, depending on which model and lens size you get, you're looking at 9 to 11 and a half hours, right?
When we tested one of them, and I could have swore it was like 13.
You're looking, we're being conservative because we'll anticipate that cold weather, but basically out of the box, you're going to get anywhere from 20 to 24 hours. So, I mean, you're talking 2-3 solid nights of hunting without doing any recharging at all. So the need, you'll probably end up seeing a lot less Rattler V2s with an external battery pack, just because they're just not needed.
Because you get 2 in the box, and when they last 9 hours, that's longer than most people are hunting at night. That's longer than the sun is down.
That's right.
So fantastic improvement. ADM mount, of course. A lot of the other features, I mean, it has an improved, I think it's an improved like cap design. It folds out of the way a lot better. The outside is definitely improvement. The body, ADM mount, still tried and true. Internally speaking, we went 12 micron across the board now. On all of them. And for the 384 and 640 units, we have a new detector. Let's talk about that, because that's probably, aside from like the user interface being more simplified and better, the thermal detector being sub 20 millikelvin is quite a, when you're looking at old versus new, like all things considered equal, like a 35 384 versus the new 35 384, like there's a big difference when you're holding them both up and you're looking at
so I think kind of as the market's matured, I mean, if you'd ask even just 4 and 5 years ago, NETD or millikelvin, depending on how guys have it listed.
Right.
Nobody knew what that meant. Nobody asked about it.
So
it didn't
explain
get talked
it to
about.
our viewers.
So this is, so basically that's just, I think as this market has matured, it went from a new thing 10 years ago that very few people knew about. Now it's really big and, and kind of mature just as the technology.
Kind of a feature people might want to start paying attention to.
Exactly. So when you've got the three main resolutions are 640, 384, and 256, right? Not many guys do 256, but we're one of the few that has all three.
Sure.
Well, if you're looking at a 640 versus 640, you're like, oh, well, the image must be the same. If you're looking at a 384 versus a competitor's 384, it must be the same.
Right.
Well, eventually you get so many guys using that same tech, you're looking for another way to differentiate.
Right.
Well, not all 640s or 384s are the same.
They're
or
not.
256s because what's the difference? That millikelvin or NETD rating.
Yeah, I bring that up on like forums, and sometimes people are selling older units, and people see like, oh, it's a 640 unit, and they're selling it. It's like, you don't understand the image quality of that 640 compared to even a 384 unit today. Like that unit's 8 years old.
Yeah.
Thermal's come a long way.
Yeah. So not only can your internal operating system, your algorithm just get improved upon to improve the image, but the actual physical hardware, that sensitivity rating basically just means it detects lower temperature differences. So what might have cost it just better resolution,
better detail.
Yeah, especially in your foreground and background. So when you're scanning, whether it be foliage or what's in front of a hog or coyote, you're trying to distinguish. I think you explained it
to me one time when I was, when it was new and learning that back in the day you were scanning, you could see hogs, but they were more or less a blob of color.
Right.
Whereas today you can see their hair.
Right.
That wasn't a thing until sensitivity detectors got better.
Yep. So literally a 384 from today that's sub 20 millikelvin would probably compare pretty favorably to a 640 from 8 years ago.
Hell yeah,
right?
Easily.
Even though that is a better sensor, it didn't have the tools around the sensor to get that way.
Right. Might be less pixely on the edges, but the detail of the image is better.
It could be slight improvements to the germanium.
Yeah.
It could be how you're tweaking your algorithm as you get better and more refined about it. There's a lot of little things in there you can do, or maybe it's a better display going from an LED to an OLED to an AMOLED. But the actual, if we're just talking sensors and everything else is the same, a sub 20 millikelvin sensor is going to perform a little bit better than a sub 35 or a sub 45 or a sub 50. So it's kind of become a distinguishing factor.
So and that's with our 384 and 640 units.
Yep, all four.
The millikelvin is still, is it sub 35?
Sub 35 on the 256s, right? Only those two models currently. My guess is eventually those will get an upgrade, but the way sensors are made, that comes down to a capacity thing, right?
Sure.
They're made on big sheets, and the sensitivity increases as you get to the center of the sheet.
Okay.
So you have to be selling enough of all the other sensitivity ratings in other devices or other markets to be producing enough to get the most sensitive. Yeah.
Okay. So then just to kind of wrap things up, if you are going to just give your honest advice, maybe there's a guy out there looking at getting a thermal scope. Maybe at this point they could pick up an older generation, a Rattler V1. There's still plenty of those.
Sure.
Or they're maybe considering a new scope. And what would the reasons be, just in general, that you would steer someone towards a Rattler V2, either versus a V1 or just in general? What advice? At the end of the day, why would this maybe be for you?
Right. So every little thing that Rattler by volume was probably the most popular rifle scope series in the country.
Absolutely.
So if you then say, hey, everything they like about that, the compact size, most guys are using ARs. There's still plenty of bolt action rifles out there.
These work great on bolt.
We've got the Adder series for that, but they like that when they come with an ADM quick detach mount, you can detach it from your gun usually. You can use it as a scanner. It's got really good return to zero if you know your rail slot. So you've got you kept the compact nature. You over doubled the battery life, almost tripled the battery life.
Yeah,
in cold weather,
you
probably did.
Tripled the battery
You probably tripled the battery life.
And the ease, because CR123s are expensive, and it's not like you can always find them at Walmart.
Yeah,
or something,
the user
you know
interface is much easier to use. It's easier to navigate. The icons in there are just sexier. They look better. It looks like a more advanced version.
Yeah.
Like if you bought a laptop with a Windows today versus one from 98,
right.
You can just tell the difference. It's more refined. The user interface, but also you get more brightness settings, more contrast settings. There is now I'm searching for the word, a sharpness adjustment as well that the originals didn't have.
Yeah.
Another one, we always had built-in recording. We didn't have sound on the Rattler V1.
That's true.
There was
That's
no
true.
microphone.
That's true.
So now you have sound. Not only that, you've got the recoil activated video too.
That's true.
So you can set that on a loop within the menu, and I think it goes between like 50, 30, or 60 seconds.
For those of you that don't know what that is, if you're getting into thermal, it's an awesome feature. You turn it on, and your device is basically recording in like 10-minute loops, and it will start saving that recording the moment it detects recoil from pulling the trigger. So like whenever you get your kill shot, you always get it recorded, which is
every time we go to like an end user based show, so we get to talk directly with end users, not just our wholesale dealers like NRA or Dallas Safari Club or Safari Club International. Those are every time I've attended one of those shows, I get a guy that just comes up, talks about a product he just liked, how much he likes it, and what inevitably comes up is, man, I just had a great hunt the other day and I forgot to hit record on the thing.
It happens all the time.
And we just say, hey, we're working on that.
Yeah.
We've already got it in our adders, but it's coming to the Rattler series, and then you can just turn it on and turn that recoil activated, and you don't have to worry about it. So, yeah.
Well, cool. All right, guys, so that's really it. We'll probably do a lot more. Maybe we'll do some more videos about the Rattler V2. These are fantastic, compact, lightweight. They're everything that the V1 is. They're just better in basically every way. If you're looking at getting a thermal scope, it's a fantastic choice. It's got a great track record. It's very popular, and we're pretty excited about it. Again, this is Chase with AGM, and we'll see you guys next time.